Continues, and you are really in the presence of greatness here. Next to me is Jack Fresco. He is an industrial designer, a social engineer, a futurist, and as you will explain later, basically you wanted to change everything about how we conduct ourselves as human beings, how we design the world, how we inhabit the world. Your formative years were spent during the Great Depression.
Yes.
So being in a financial crisis is not new for you.
You're right.
So maybe you could address, there's a lot of young people out here, wondering what will, the financial crisis mean to me, how will it affect my life?
Right.
What would you say to them about that?
Well, I'd say that the formative years during the Depression made me aware of what was needed to make society work. What we can do, not what the future will be, but what it can be if enough people want that. If you do nothing, I can assure you nothing will happen. Roxanne and I have no power at all. So if you like the Venus Project, by the way, it's not perfect. It's just a better system for the world. And if you like the Venus Project, talk about it. Show people our films. Look at our website. Learn about it. Don't project into it what you think it is. If you have any questions, don't be polite. Just say, I don't get it. How are you going to deal with this or that? Don't say yes and smile. If you don't like it, say, I don't like it. Just say, this is why I don't like it, or why it won't work. So don't be polite, please.
Please give an applause to Mr. Fresco, a revolutionary of our times, and full of brain power.
Thank you. I just want to make sure you understand, I don't know what the future will be. I'm not psychic. We may kill each other or destroy the environment. It depends on what you do when you leave here. So I want to tell you a little bit about the Venus Project if you know nothing about it. Then I want to talk about sustainability, which everybody talks about, but I haven't heard any real description of what would sustain us. The Venus Project maintains that if we declare the Earth, all the Earth's resources, as the common heritage of all the world's people, there'll be no more territorial invasions, no need for armies and navies, no need for prisons or police. This is only necessary in a scarcity-oriented society. We have the technology and the brains today to solve most problems. We have more than enough resources, but we have to do certain things that may not please the establishment. So when the establishment uses the term sustainability, it means for them. So the word sustainability has very little meaning, because everybody, all doctors, make a lot of money treating cancer. So what's sustainability? If you cure cancer, the standard of living goes down. So you see, there's advantages to some people in human suffering. Psychologists deal with people that have problems. But if you raise children in a sane society, there are no problems, except genetic damage. And in that case, they're health, so there's no problem. Any psychologist that would adjust you to this system has to be stupid. Any psychiatrist that would do that. Any major in psychology is wasting their lives, because many professions are going to be phased out. It'd be very easy to make a lawyer. It'd take about an hour and a half and a laptop lawyer. So if you want any questions answered, that's going to be done in an hour and a half. Medical diagnosticians, people say that deal with skin diseases, like a dermatologist. When you go to medical school, they show you pictures and in reality different skin diseases. So you've got to remember the images. If you look at a skin disease that's new, you go like that, that means I'm not quite sure what I'm looking at. So you call another doctor and say, what do you make of that? So all you have to do is photograph every known disease, and then use a scanner, scan it, and give you the latest treatment. You don't need dermatologists anymore. You can phase them out. So if you're studying medicine, we should talk after the session. So there's a lot that can be phased out. In fact, we can phase out 80% of the professions. There'll be no businessmen in the future if we make the future. There'll be no stockbrokers. They do nothing. They add nothing to the world. There'll be no politicians. Politicians don't know what to do. They're businessmen and lawyers. They have no idea how to solve problems. Don't take my word for it, but ask any politician, how do you prevent automobiles from hitting each other? I don't know. How do you prevent nations from wanting to kill one another? I don't know. How do you decrease crime? You put up a sign, say no to drugs? That's some idiot wrote that. As long as there's money in it, they'll sell drugs. You may not agree with everything I say. I want to say this, that human beings sometimes fear machines and technology. It's not technology that pollutes the world, it's man. Men dump stuff into the ocean. Men pollute the air for profit. Men dump waste into the oceans and the fields. It's humans that kill each other, mostly in the name of God. Do you believe in God? Which God? My God or your God? And if somebody else's God, we get shot. So all of you are brought up to believe that certain things work a certain way. That's not true. They maintain control over you by managing news and making you alike. And you keep using the term individuality. There's no such thing. If you met an individual, you couldn't talk to him. You wouldn't know what the hell he was talking about. Or she. So women are given a particular role in this country. When you give a baby dolls to a girl, you're already programming her. When you tie a big bow in her hair, you're programming her. So women in the future will pick whatever the hell they want. Electric trains, not necessarily a baby doll. Wiping the baby's ass is no real great career. In other words, they try to get women to believe in having children. You know, children are a pain in the ass in most instances. They're not pleasant. They can't say anything new. They require a lot of your time. You can't travel. You can't do a lot of things. So the population in the future will be diminished. Now, a lot of you believe, well, I like to have my own children. I want my name going into the future. See? Now, if you had a child, say 11 years old, and the hospital called you. Can you hear me back there? And the hospital called you and said, we gave you the wrong child 11 years ago. You're not going to turn it in. Don't you see that all children are about the same? They all say about the same things. And a lot of people think that some children are born lazy, some are born productive, some have criminal tendencies. All that is bullshit. Children reflect their culture. If you were brought up in a world today, say the headhunters of the Amazon, say you were brought up there. If I went into your dad's hut and said, doesn't it bother you to have 10 shrunken heads? He said, yes, my brother has 20. So, is that bad? No, that's normal to where he's coming from. If you're brought up in a Nazi culture as a baby, Heil Hitler, Deutschland over alles, Germany above all, you become a Nazi if you've never seen anything else. So I'm saying no one is to blame for whatever they are. They're culture bound. And all our habits and beliefs are shaped by our culture, even our language. And nobody invented language. And the language we learned in school is thousands of years old. That's why it's difficult to talk to people. Language, and particularly the Bible, is subject to interpretation. When you read the Bible, somebody says, this is what Jesus meant, and another guy says, no, he meant that. And the third person says, you're both wrong. That's why you have Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, Catholic, because the Bible is subject to interpretation. So is our everyday language. It's a terrible thing to give people a language that's subject to interpretation. You say things to them, and they come out with something else, totally unrelated, and you think maybe there's something wrong with them. There's something wrong with our language. The big problem is, can we develop a language that's not subject to interpretation? Mathematics isn't subject to interpretation. Structural engineering isn't subject. Chemistry isn't. You talk to a chemist in France and give him a formula, he turns out the same thing. If engineering was subject to interpretation, you couldn't build bridges. Do you understand that? You can handle people if the language has general meaning. That's why lawyers exist. They can take language and twist it around, do whatever they want with it. You can't do that with technology. You can't twist mathematics. You can't twist chemistry. So I'm saying the language we learn is improper for developing a sane society. And sustainability is a word that has little or no meaning. Sustainability to the medical profession is people get sick and they come to the doctors and make more money with it. Well, that's sustainability. But if you make automobiles that are self-repairing, or electric circuits that are self-repairing, the people that repair electric circuits in this system will get mad at you. So it's not sustainability for that. So when you use the word sustainability, what the hell are you talking about? When we use the word in the Venus Project, we mean the well-being of all the world's people, not a selected few. Now we have more than enough energy, more than enough resources, so everyone can live better than the wealthiest people today. I know it's hard for you to imagine because you've never known anything like that. But do you know there's over 2 million cars, automobiles a day outside of factories for 8 hours while the people are at work? What if those automobiles were used by people that came out of the factory and drove them away? You'd have 10 times as many cars available all over the world. Then you have freight yards with freight trains, hoping that business would be good next month so those freight trains would be working. In a balanced load economy, everything works for everybody. There's nothing sitting around. Now, when you design a factory today, the minute you build that factory, the land value goes up. So if you need spare parts, a spare parts factory will not locate near you because the land cost is too high, so they move to Hialeah, Florida. And then you have to have the freight trains pick up stuff all over the country to make things. The free enterprise system is the most wasteful and destructive system ever conceived of. It's a very stupid process where some people live very well. They call it sustainability. But what you have to offer takes things away from them. So that would be unsustainable. So sustainability is a word that has really no meaning unless you define the terms. So when you speak to people, they say, I believe in a freedom society where everybody participates. Participatory democracy. So I meet an American that says, that's what I believe, participatory democracy. I said, did you vote for the space program? I said, I guess not. Did you vote for any highway design? I guess not. Did you vote for the design of the Capitol building? No, I guess not. Where the hell do you participate? You don't vote for anybody. They put the people up there for you to vote for. You don't pick the people because you don't even know there's such a thing as that. So the system you live under is basically the one that creates the problems. So when Obama became elected in the States, they figured he'd do something new. He wouldn't even make it if he was that different. He had to say things that people identified with to get in. And if you do that, you can't change people. You can only change people by offering new ideas. When Edison came out with the electric light, some of his stuff was stolen, some was original, some were made by the people that worked for him. He didn't do everything. And no invention is completely radical. And there are many people doing research on cancer. Let's say you do research on cancer, and you find out 100 things that don't work. That's useful too. So I read this book, and 2 years later I come up with some help for cancer, and I get a Nobel Prize. What about all the other people working on it? They work just as hard as you do. Giving a person a Nobel Prize discourages other people. You don't have to do those things. When people are properly educated, they feel good because they can add to cancer or add to the control of heart disease. They don't work for money. When people work for money, can you really trust them? I got just the car you're looking for. I've got just the house you're looking for. All this is bullshit. And the kind of world you live in is essentially bullshit. And that's what it's made of. And there are no... There's really no bad words. Maybe if this young lady baked a pie and dropped it, she might say fiddly-dee. And the guy might say shit if he drops the pie. Doesn't mean he's sorry he dropped the pie. That's what it means. When the guy says bullshit, it means the guy can't accept what you say. It has nothing to do with fecal matter of the bull. So, the way we use language, bothers some people. I spoke at Columbia University and I used profanity, and one of the academicians said, if your mother were here, would you use that kind of language? So I said, Mother, will you stand up? In other words, another thing that you have to learn is that the word love is another bullshit word. When you fall in love at 15, it's different than falling in love at 20. And when you're 27, your concept of love is different again. So all of us, I'm sure all of us will agree we've done stupid things in the past. Okay, if you agree with that, if you live with a replica of yourself, how long will you be together? You understand? You're a changing organism. You're always changing. And the people think that I believe in utopia. I don't. I don't believe there's any fixed system. It keeps changing. Your computers don't stop at a certain time and that's it. You go on, they get smaller and faster and do more. And cameras don't need film anymore. And in the future, they'll tell you a lot about the weather and everything else. So there's no final frontiers. There's no best society. There's no best laptop or camera. So children in the future will be educated to accept change, not hang on to tradition. Tradition is old systems that worked one time. So we can examine them and ask whether that system should be preserved. An elderly Jewish man came up to me one day and said, will you permit tradition in the future? I said, will you? He said, yes. I said, the Nazis meet once a month for 75 years. Is that okay with you? He said, no. I said, who selects what tradition? Your tradition, his tradition? So all of these things, Christmas is business, has nothing to do with anything. And look, we don't go to other countries to bring democracy. That's another whack of shit. We go there for their resources, their oil, their situation. And the business of armament is a real big industry, selling armament. So war is good business. I had a friend that was a pilot in World War I. He told me he flew over German munition storage systems and he was ordered not to bomb it. And he could not understand that. He thought of every reason. He said he flew over 8 times Krupp munition storage works and was told not to bomb it. He was so confused. When he got out of the Army, World War I, there was a book called Arms and the Men. I'm sure none of you have ever even heard of it. Everybody ever hear of the book, Arms and the Men? It was pulled out of most libraries. It was written up in Fortune magazine in America. The whole article, how DuPont had shares in I.J. Farber. That's why it was ordered not to bomb it. Everybody doesn't know what I'm talking about? Okay. Vested interest. You know what that means? People that have invested in other countries. They don't want that country bombed. So it's very difficult to have a war that's sincere. Most wars are for profit making. In fact, I should say, all the wars that I know of are for profit making. Now, a lot of people come to me or they come to our center and they say, this is their words, not mine. Why are these goddamn North Koreans building rockets? And why is China building big armies? And why is it that we can't arm too? Well, I can tell you why, and I don't want you to take my word for it, but if you write and try to get a copy of the newspaper called The Telegraph in England, U.S. presented headlines and it says, U.S. intends to bomb 7 cities, and it names them nuclear, sneak attack. It was not called a sneak attack, it's called strategic strike today. So it makes it safe. Anyway, U.S. intends to bomb several cities, and it names them all. Well, that's why they're on there. Doesn't it occur to you that people who get in an airplane and fly them into the trade center kill themselves? What did we do to make them that bitter against the United States? What did we do? We must have done something down the line. So in a true democracy, which has never existed anywhere in the world, your president would get up and criticize another country for an hour or an hour and a half. Then we would invite the prime minister of that country to give his point of view. Then we'd invite the prime minister of Sweden. He said, they're both full of shit. This is how I see it. That's a democracy. When you have every point of view. But if you just got religion on Sunday, that's not a democracy. If you have comparative religion, what different people believe all over the world, that's better. But if you also have atheists, agnostics, everybody on the air, and you turn it on and off, that's a democracy. But when you got one point of view on the air called managed news, meaning they're letting you hear what they think you ought to hear. Somebody's making decisions about the way you ought to think and giving you their viewpoint as a dominant viewpoint. In the future, children will be educated in different cultures, different value systems, what different people believe. All over the world they will travel, live with Italian families, Greek families, to get the feel of the culture. Most Americans, when they travel to France, they go to the American club. They go to Italy, they go to the American club. You don't get the feel of the other country when you do that. So if you get the feel of people, you find out they're pretty much the same. They all like their kids, they all want the same thing. So the way you bridge the difference between nations, no matter how different their culture is, don't touch their religion or their social customs that you don't agree with. All nations need the same thing: clean air, clean water, arable land, and a relevant education. Relevant education means how to maintain nature, keep it at best, keep the waters clean, not dump stuff into the ocean, toxic material. Why do you have to write your congressman? Who the hell is that jerk that you have to write to say you want women's rights? He should be at the forefront of technology. When you fly in an airliner today, you don't have the right to pilot and say you've been flying at an angle for an hour and a half, straighten up. He knows his business. That's why you don't have to write it. And the navigator knows how to take you to Hawaii. But if you see icebergs coming up, you don't have the right to pilot to say, hey, where the hell are we going? Who are these jackasses you have to write? They should know more about the future, about training, language, different customs, and be at the forefront of technology. That's what you do when you go to a doctor. You don't know enough about medicine. When he says you have cancer in the 5th lumbar, you say, what's that? And he shows you on a chart. See? So we have many people in government, politicians they're called, and they say things people like to hear. They say that because it's the only way they can get elected. Because they say most of you are wrong in the way you're brought up. They'll never make it. You understand that? So politicians say things people like to hear. If a politician discovered that the earth was round, if you want to get along with people when they all believe it was flat, you can say, folks, it's a little round and a little flat. You get along with most people. It isn't the business of science to get along with people. Our business is to say, if you believe the earth is flat, this is the evidence we have to show that it's round. Present the evidence. That's the best you can do. But when you cater to people's beliefs, you're holding back. You're dishonest. You're corrupt. That's why politicians can never be honest, because they depend on voting. They depend on people supporting them. So the people will support them if they're ignorant. And most people are, when I use the word ignorant, our society keeps us from learning certain things because it's difficult to maintain control over people if you bring them up to be free. You see, when people are free, you have 4,000 different political parties. Now, you couldn't get anybody elected anywhere. So it's very difficult. The words we use, the language we use, people say to me, have a nice weekend. Why don't they say, have a nice life? Why just a weekend? You see, you don't even know it. You're brought up in crap up to here, so everything looks right and normal to you. If you're brought up by these Seminole Indians, you say, you can have anything you want. What do you want? Well, I'd like a teepee that doesn't require too much maintenance. What the hell do you expect them to ask for? If you ask an impoverished black family, maybe the husband, maybe, what would you like? You can have anything you like. So like a pool table paid for. So, what do you think people ask for? Things within the culture that they live with. They don't. An Eskimo never dreams. All Eskimos never dreams of walking on a palm-fringed beach in the tropics. Can you understand? They've never been exposed to it, unless they've seen motion pictures or have traveled. So your dreams are always within your culture. You ask the amateur, what do you want? A decent job. They don't want a decent job, they want a purchasing power. They don't want a job. They want access to the necessities of life. So nobody, or very few people, drive the kind of car they want. They drive what they can afford. Very few people live in the kind of house they want to live in. They live in what they can afford. So what the hell's a democracy? Doesn't exist. Your choices are dependent on your purchasing power. You understand that, I'm sure. You can't go to the best doctor. You can go to the best doctor you can afford. So that's not a sane society. You live in a society of advantages, and all the industries seek to maintain the cutting edge. And if that's the bottom line, is profit, then you can't have sanity. You can't have sustainability. But every country wants sustainability for themselves, their concept of sustainability. But the concept of sustainability that I talk about is everybody sharing all the Earth's resources, where there's no artificial boundaries that separate people, where you can travel anywhere in the world and to go to any school you want to without debt or payment of any kind, where doctors are brought up to enjoy making people well, but they will live well. Everybody will live well in the future. There's no need to have poor. And then you have organizations like the Red Cross, and all these different organizations that do-gooders. You know, do-gooder is making the earth, shaping the earth and designing it so that you have no poverty, no hunger, no decency. Everybody in this culture is a prostitute. If you sing on TV and sell toothpaste, you're prostituting your voice. Everybody in society that does work for another company, the minute you punch that time clock and go to work, you're in a dictatorship. The boss doesn't say, would you like a 3-week vacation, a month, or what would you like? Would you like to spend more time with your family? I haven't met any bosses like that. So when you go to work for a company, it's a dictatorship. If you type for 20 years for some corporation, then you retire, you know what you got up here when you retire? Corporate letters. You haven't learned in school how to relate, how to live, how to find meaning in your own life. So that's why I say, and more than many people do not understand it, we won't make the history books of the future. We're so corrupt, backward, and stupid. All the presidents of the United States, all the way back, were jackasses. All of them. And were establishment. People in political office are put there to keep things as they are. I'm sorry about that. Pilots, aviation pilots, say in the United States, are good people. They go to church on Sunday, they believe in helping an old lady across the street, but they fly over cities and press a button and burn it all out, and they go to sleep. People say, I wonder if they can sleep well at night. They sleep very well, because they get a medal when they do that. And they get an X on the fuselage. For every city you bomb, you get a little X, so people respect you. You're a war hero. You killed a lot of people. We don't believe in armies and atheists. We believe in training people as problem solvers, so we can bridge the difference between nations. So anyone doesn't understand that? Problem solvers. We have problems, not killing machines. So a soldier becomes a killing machine. He's given a super machine gun with a laser beam on it. The purpose of the laser beam, if it's on the person, that's where the bullets are going to go. So people say to me, well, are machines going to take over in the future? No, they're not. Machines don't give a damn. They don't care about things. They don't have feelings. So don't worry about machines. It's man that operates guided missiles. Think about it. It's man that drops bombs on cities, not the machine. The machine carries the bomb. It was designed by another jackass. There's no airplane you can design that the Army won't use if it works too well. There's nothing you can design that the military aren't looking for. Military people are stupid because they brought up with a narrow vision of national defense. The real national defense is bridging the differences between nations, learning how to live together and share the Earth's resources. There's enough technicians today, if you don't believe me, go to any supermarket. You see a lot of food, hardware, wrenches, machines. We can turn out things in abundance. What the hell are you selling things for? People should have access to these wonderful gifts that people have. So in the future, we eliminate money. You go to an access center and access wherever you want. The same for doctors, lawyers. There's no lawyers in the future. There's no investment bankers. There's no brokers. There's nobody that contributes nothing to society. Everybody be brought up as a functional unit of society. Now, if you go out here and look at your own cities, you will see every building is a different size, a different design. All the windows are different sizes. So you can't design for sustainability, because he makes windows a different size. He makes windows another size. So how are you going to have sustainability with all these different kinds of cars? What you need is intelligent transportation that takes you anywhere within the city in a short amount of time. Now you're going to have to take my word for this. When I was a kid, women as a rule used to operate elevators. They turned a crank. They never quite got to the floor and had to move it up until that elevator arrived on your floor. And if the doors closed on you, too bad. Today they back off and you press 17, the elevator stops exactly on the 17th floor. You don't have to. You move people out. And in our society, we move people out of government. It's all operated by machine, meaning not the people, just the products. The farming, the agriculture, the production, it's all machine design, program. But it does not program or design people. People are free to live whatever lifestyle they want to. If they hurt other people, they're helped. They're not put in prison. So I used to think, like most of you, that some people are born killers. Some people are born losers. Some people are lazy. Some have a lot of incentive. All that's generated by environment. I didn't know that. I knew this, though. But I know that if you have a dog with 6 puppies, and the puppies can't get to mommy's milk, the other puppies push them away, the little weak one. Did you know that the weak one that's pushed away always, not sometimes, becomes a leader? How many of you knew that? The little kid that gets hand-down clothing. Said, Mommy, I want new clothing. I don't want Bobby's suit. When he gets a job, he never wears second-hand clothing. Your environment shapes your values. If you don't understand what that means. So they believe at one time, maybe a Japanese baby would learn to speak Japanese faster than an English baby if you brought them both to Japan. And they tried it, and they both learned at the same rate. You cannot pass on inherited, learned experiences. Bigotry, prejudice is learned. Don't play with that little Greek boy. You're not a Greek. You don't want to associate with that girl. She's not your faith, your nationality. So your parents are constantly programming you, your elders, to an old world that they knew of. If you take your grandmother to Miami Beach, and she sees the girls walking around their butts hanging out, they've gone too far, and she'd be right where she's coming from. But she's not right. There's no right, no wrong. There's no good or bad people. There are people brought up with different values. Like if you're brought up in Sicily, and a guy looks at your sister with sexual intent, you whack him. Because if you're brought up if you catch your wife in bed with another guy in Latin America, you can shoot them both. Or you can shoot your wife or the guy. And the judge in that country can understand that. But in the same society, would you say, honey, how much longer are you going to be? And then you say, where is it that I'm not meeting your needs? Do you understand? People don't talk like that. They don't even think like that. You see, when you let that guy say that, when I was a kid, all movies, there were no problem solving. There were two guns the guy pulled out, and he solved his problems right away by shooting those he didn't agree with. So you see, the movies you see is the same old soap opera over and over again. Different characters with the same, it's who's fucking who. That's what it's about. But they're having an affair, so they can't use that kind of language. You can't just have to go to the toilet. I go to the restroom. There's no place to rest in any restroom. So the world you live in is really artificial as hell. Now even the word love, I said before, sometimes you love a person, sometimes you don't, sometimes you like yourself. So love is a fluctuating thing. So if you marry a guy because he's great, and you find out certain things you don't like about him, you scratch your head, do I really love him or don't? Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. Depends on what he does. So you see, it's the same for women. But if you believe in romantic love all your life, the guy's going to be wonderful. The guy with the golden hair, the guy that rides a white horse. You get that from movies. The movies are really concerned with one thing, profit. They don't give a damn. They don't make movies that are against war. It wouldn't serve their interest. Do you understand? If they make one movie against war, they'll make 500 pro-war. There's more money. So you live in a world that's based on the monetary system. And that's why you can't have justice. So when people say to me, when you talk about sustainability, I can't talk about it because it has different meanings for different people. The only kind of sustainability that I know of is one world. It will bring all the nations together. Those of you that don't quite understand that, the cost of World War II, I'm talking about flattening out Germany, England was bombed flat. I know all of those costs, knocking out the museums, veterans' payments after the war, could have housed everybody on earth, could have built hospitals all over the world, and give every research lab whatever the hell they needed. What a waste, what a form of stupidity. 400 ships on the bottom of the sea, loaded with copper, brass, tungsten, all these valuable things sunken. We won the war. We lost a lot of resources and human beings for no reason at all. We keep going to war. It never seems to stop. Why is that? Because there's a lot of profit in war. When you own a factory that makes airplanes, you make a lot of money. That's why I said, in times of war, if there was total conscription of men, machines, and they told you to buy war bonds, that'll bring Johnny home faster. Well, if money and your bonds bring Johnny home faster, why not conscript all the money of all the banks and bring Johnny home faster? Because there's no profit in it. So you see, the world you live in is unsustainable. It's going to run into jams all over the world, continuously. Now, bankers like to lend you money at interest. When you put your money in a bank, they lend it out. And if a person borrows money from the bank, they add the interest, and that's their potential of finances. And they can get money from the government printing office for 3 cents on the dollar. Before World War II, we told American industry expanded. And they said, hell no, what are we going to do with a big plant after the war? So they taxed the American people, their money, to expand all the war plants, then gave it to them for 3 cents on the dollar. The American public really got shafted. They're not allowed to use that symbol. But they don't even know they're shafted. They think somehow government money is used. They don't know that government money is your money. And the government lives on your money. But they try to condition you to think they're great politicians. Well, that's part of the crime. So that's why I say we won't make the history books in the future. The people of the future will be so different. The children will never be given books like Cinderella or Dickie Dare and the sheep on the way another cow. The cow said moo moo, then another sheep it said ba ba. Well, that's, you fill the kid's head with that kind of crap, what do you expect? And you fill him with religion. God loves you. And when a hurricane comes, it doesn't go over the church, it blows the church away too. And if the bus full of nuns, it doesn't go over or around that bus, it blows that bus away. It says the will of Allah. You know, or it's God's will, depending on the way you're brought up. If I designed a bridge and it caved in, it's the will of Allah. It's your math that's off, buddy. You can't get away with that kind of religious crap. Or the Lord acts in strange ways. If I say the bridge acts in strange ways, I can't get away with that. So science is not perfect. It's just closer approximations of reality. That's all. When he said, I talk to God, there are a lot of people that think God talks to them. Or they talk to God. They can't even talk to Einstein. They can't even talk to a lawyer or a doctor about medical problems. How are they going to talk to God? Just imagine. I'm not Arthur C. Clarke, but I'm just saying there are many scientists that believe that someday extraterrestrials will come here. Anything that can fly 100 billion light years to space is not like us. And they don't want to see you president. The jackass of all jackasses. You know, they don't want to hear your little stories. They'd be very different than anybody you know. So you see, they have nothing. In other words, if they came from another planet, what they would do is give us the answers to a lot of problems, rather than come to take over. A lot of people believe in flying saucers. I know you don't know this, but I was hired by the publishers of the first book on flying saucers to look at the photographs of people who took a flying saucer. So far, all of those pictures were fake. I can tell by the size of the disc in relation to the trees. They were few inches in diameter. And the one that you see on the covers of most magazines with the 3 spheres underneath it, tilted, and portholes, is a 1927 Sears and Roebuck chicken brooder. So people that believe in flying saucers think that people are coming here from another world to show us the way. You know, or God will send us angels down if we behave badly. Well, the whole concept of God is a fictitious structure. Now, the right-hand man of God was named Lucifer. And God said, try to better yourself. So Lucifer wanted God's throne. So God got angry and he kicked all those angels out. They're called the falling angels. If God didn't know that his son would be crucified, he's one of the lesser gods. So, you see, your God isn't even smart. The kind of God men make and worship is as dumb as they are. He gets angry, creates floods, disease, bubonic plague, because people don't believe. He made them. What the hell do you expect? So here you have these contradictory stories. And then you have constant romance on television. Romantic novels, so people are constantly looking for the right person. There is no right person if you keep changing and reading and learning more. The person you married when you were 21 is the wrong person when you're 42. And unless they read the same books you read and you share values. You see what I mean? So you can't have a constant anything. There's no final thing you can work on that works. There's no best language. Some people say, what if we learn interlingua or something like that, some universal language. Universal language doesn't change people. Semantics doesn't change people unless you change the whole society. Semantics will use it to make more money. They'll use semantics or anything else. So you don't have a decent society. You can't even be decent. Let's say you're a decent woman and you work for Macy's and the woman next to you says, how much is that lamp? And you say $20. She says, I'll take 2. Being decent and a Christian, you say, if you go 4 stores down, you get the same lamp for $10. You won't be working for Macy's very long. So how can you be decent and be a lawyer? How can you be decent and be a psychiatrist? $65 an hour. If the guy has financial problems, give him some money so he can easily solve his problems. But the psychiatrist makes it more difficult for a person with financial problems. So some psychiatrists are decent, they act in accordance with the society they live in. I'm sorry if you're a psychiatrist. But anyway, same with psychology. Now people are not brought up to be sane, because they don't know what that means. Being sane, you don't look at an airplane and say, that's a new kind of plane, it'll never fly. which is the way people will talk in the future. I don't see any wings on that plane. How do you propose to lift off the ground without wings? It's really a question. No, it will never fly, it doesn't have any wings. You don't know what you're talking about. When you see a new type of anything, you say, where's the image screen on the TV set? Well, in the future, there'll be no image screen. They'll generate an image in your room. The next thing on TV is 3D without glasses. What comes after that? Generated images. You can have your brother-in-law sit in your house, and he lives in California, and he's sitting on the couch. The only thing matters is you put your hand through it, and people won't like that. I'd like to be able to shake hands with my brother-in-law. That's the next thing on TV, called teletactile imaging. You say, well, how the hell can you make teletactile imaging? I'm going to tell you how. At the tip of your finger, you have a batch of nerves. When you stick this finger in cold water, the transmission of that cold to the brain is so many thousand cycles per second. When you stick your finger in hot water, it's hot, the transmission is different. So if you learn what those transmissions are and play them into the finger, you can play your finger in hot water, salt water, touching a balloon. Do you understand what I mean? From the fingertip to the brain, there's a transmission of so many cycles per second. Your tongue has holes in it, lots of them. And when you eat bacon and eggs, it falls in that hole, it's pre-digested, and the nerve underneath it titillates a certain way to the brain, which you interpret as bacon and eggs. When we find out those frequencies, that's what we'll be studying in the future. When people say, what will people do? You can make anything taste like anything else. And you can make, they say in your school books, everybody gets old and dies. So we all accept that. But the medics tell us, the physiologists, that plaque accumulates in our blood vessels. And the wall becomes thick like a clogged sewer pipe. And the nutrients can't get out, so you get old and wrinkled. Not because you're getting old and wrinkled, because we don't know how to maintain the body at its optimal. But we're moving fast in that direction, and we'll be able to clean out the blood vessels and keep you at 22 all the time. Or go back toward 22, or whatever age is your maximum performance. People can live indefinitely when people learn more about how the body works. Instead of praying, dear God, it hadn't rained for 6 months, my plants are dying now, dig a ditch, an irrigation ditch. All the scientists are trying to tell you, get up off your ass and make it a better place. Instead of hoping that the Lord shall give us peace on earth and goodwill to all people. What the hell does that mean? Nothing. You give lip service to religion. God is wonderful. God is great. You know, it's like bringing the teacher an apple. They're trying to get on the good side of God. They can't even conceive of God. So I'm saying to you, if you want a better world, you have to agree with some portions of what I say or disagree. And please don't be polite when you ask questions. If you ask questions, if I fail to answer it, say you didn't answer my question. Don't be polite, please. So let's go toward questions. Yes? Let me have a little bit of this first.
My name is Daniel Rosenberg. I'm thinking of the prospect of how fast Venus Project could be implemented, and secondly also being a little bit flippant here in Denmark, which is where I live, and I regard it as a Hobbit kind of county where we are very, very insulated. We are on the top of the food chain, and but it's probably one of the best places in Scandinavia to create a Venus Project if there were, you know, philanthropists getting together. I know this sounds like you're talking to people, but how fast could this be done? You think, provided that there was a lot of goodwill and good people?
I'm sorry, due to these gadgets don't work too well. I still don't know what your question is.
The question is, how fast can the Venus Project be made real?
How much work you do doesn't depend on. I have no power at all. It's what you do. Whatever country I go to and speak, if the people do nothing, nothing will happen. The more you work at it and educate people as to what the Venus Project is, the sooner you'll see it. Or if you do nothing, we'll probably kill each other. our language, our social habits are moving towards self-destruction and environmental destruction. I don't like what I'm saying, but I just, yes, sir.
We have a question over here.
Hello, my name is Marius Boudou. I was wondering, you talked about the current definition of sustainability where it just means that the people in power get to stay in power and keep the system the way it is.
That's what they mean by sustainability.
Sorry?
That's what they mean
Right.
by sustainability.
In order to implement these new cities and using the new resource-based system rather than monetary system, how do you propose to bridge the gap where you build a city that is resource-based in a context that is still monetary-based?
I understand. Years ago, when I first was designing this system, I asked myself, that's what thinking is, talking to yourself. I asked myself, how are we going to change all these people? They have different values, different customs, different language, different interpretations. So that's the time I joined the Ku Klux Klan in Miami. The reason I joined to see if I could change them. So I dissolved that organization in a month and a half, alone. Then I joined the White Citizens Club. The White Citizens Council hates foreigners, all foreigners. So I joined that organization. I dissolved it in 1 month. Then I asked some questions in New York. What are the most backward people in the area? They said, the Arabs. I said, what makes you think they're backward? That group still believes the earth was flat. Not all Arabs, the group they would talk about. So I said, boy, if I'm going to try to change the world, I've got to change them. So I called up the lead Arab. He said, want to know whether I was an Arab? And I said, yes, I'm not an Arab. But that's to gain entry. So he said to me, where was your father born? And I gave him places that he would accept. So he says, come and saw me, which means come and see me. So when I came to see him, he said to me, you believe the world's round? I said, yes. He went, in his language, that means it can't be round. You're wrong. So he held up his hands like this, and he said, John, if the world is round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down from the world. There'd be no ocean, nothing. Kept pointing to his head, and how smart he was. So I figured I have to get to that guy if I wish to change the world. So I gave him a rubber balloon, and I rubbed it with fur, and I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold him away from the balloon. Those of you that don't know this, if you rub a balloon with fur or rub it fast, you generate static electricity, and that'll suck the cornflakes up to the balloon. So all the cornflakes jumped out of his hand up to the balloon, and his jaw hit the pavement. He said, world he magnet? I said, yeah. And he explained that to all the other Arabs. In an hour and a half, they accepted the fact that the earth was round. Then I took a few of those Arabs to an airport. They've never seen an airplane. And they turned to Elbaz, who was their leader. They said, why for? They put the fan in front of the aeroplane. The fan meaning the propeller. Elbaz said, the aeroplane will go up near to the sun, it gets hot, so they put the fan in front. Now he was using his background. There's nothing wrong with him. Nobody ever does anything wrong, by the way. They use whatever knowledge they have. If the knowledge doesn't fit reality, they suffer. So no one ever makes a mistake. The first guy that played around with nitric acid and glycerin, the building disappeared. So did the guy. And his brother-in-law wrote, never fool with that stuff. The first guy that wanted to fly built 2 sets of wings, 3 feet on each side. He jumped off the Eiffel Tower and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time. Where do you think it comes from? No one ever makes a mistake. How are they going to know? Yes.
I was just wondering, when you see your vision of the future, it made me think about, because the lack of presence of police and army and so on in prisons
Only during the transition.
Yes, but it made me think about what William Burroughs once wrote. He wrote that a true police state doesn't need any police because people are policing themselves. Is that what you are thinking about?
Well, I don't quite understand the question.
I'm asking, is this the fulfillment of total police state?
No, the city that I showed you here is transitional. There's no final cities. Everything I make and build, I always change next month, next year. There's no final frontiers. And everything I work on is all transitional. So everything you saw on that screen is not where the future is going to be. If they use the city I designed, the kids of the future, that would be a straitjacket to them. They'll design their own cities. See, but if you make a statue of fresco and put it there and say, he designed the city, you hold people back. There are no great men in the future. There are no beauty contests. There's nothing like that in the future. Because everybody works on the world to make it better, and they're all received as friends. Because there's nobody out there to take anything away from you.
But how adaptable is your vision of the future with human nature?
Very good.
Because, you said everybody will be functional inhabitants in the city, contributing. But what about people who doesn't want to take part, who doesn't want to participate?
Very good.
Yes.
The countries that don't want to join, let's say many countries join, but some won't join this universal world project. This is true. But they're on their own. They don't get the advantages of the cooperative group. So if there's a group like the Amish people that want to live their own group, their own lifestyle, they don't want to live in our city. They want to live out in the country with their own projects. We'll put up the buildings for them, design the buildings for them, design the food production systems for them if they want us to. But we don't control them. Now, if they say, we don't like your materials, we want wood, we like wood, then if it catches fire, it's your problem. Do you understand?
Yeah.
If you want to go the old way, if you don't want to take everything we design in buildings, your mattresses will be inflated with CO2 gas. So if you happen to smoke and drop a cigarette on it, it puts it out. But if you want to go ahead the old way, that's up to you. You're responsible for it. But you don't live in our cities. Our cities have no fire engines, no police, no prisons, because everything designed in the city is fireproof. And you don't have signs, drive carefully, school district, 15 miles an hour. The power output in that region to your car is 15 miles an hour. So you can step on the gas all you want to, all your car does is 15 miles an hour. Then there are signs today that say, drive carefully, school children crossing. Well, we have a pavement that looks like two combs. When the kid presses the button across the street, the pavement turns up like that, so no car can hit a kid. Do you understand what I'm getting at? Not a sign, be nice, be kind, be careful. No, we're building in the city system. If your blood vessels dependent on you, you're going to go upstairs, so you speed up your heart, and you go upstairs. That's what the automobile is like today. They're very dumb. Automobiles that have no intelligence at all. If your car veers to the right, either your tire air pressure is uneven or something's wrong with the steering wheel. But when a human being goes wrong, they put him in jail. There's something in the environment that made him that way. Well, what kind of environment would make a serial killer? There was a doctor named Werther. Most of you never heard of him. He wrote a book called Show of Violence, showing what makes these people the way they are. And here's what they found out about, same thing with Jeffrey Dahmer. You know who Jeffrey Dahmer was? He's a guy that cut off heads, put them in the refrigerator, ate them, went to bars, got another guy to come up to his apartment, he put drugs in their drink, and they'd pass out, then he'd cut them up. Now, Jeff, they said, what's the matter with this guy? Nothing's the matter with him. He was brought up in an environment that was warped. Now, let me explain that to you. When he was about 3 years old, 4 years old to be exact, perhaps a little older, he was touching his private parts. His mother was an old-time Baptist. And she said, you're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body. And that kid began to tremble. You burn eternally. You'll get the worst of Satan's treatment. And the kid was scared. And the mother said at 2 in the morning he was screaming. And she came in the room, he stuck needles into his genitals because he didn't want to go to hell. And he used to take minority kids into the woods and try to cut their genitals off to keep them from going to hell. What do you think they do when we get mad at the Japanese? They show you Japanese with crooked teeth, bayoneting a pregnant woman and pulling the bayonet up, and enlistment goes up 75%. You have to show them as evil people to get enlistment high. So that's all you do, is you run movies and show Japanese gang raping a white woman in Samoa, wherever the hell. But they do that, and Japanese are just like us. Some are good, some are evil, some commit crimes more so. They're not that different. People aren't that different. You have the same kind of crimes all over the world. But what makes them that way? That's what this doctor wanted to know, so he can raise people without that type of experience so they don't become what you call aberrant in their behavior. Aberrant behavior is generated. Now, I can't think of the guy's name immediately, but, Jeffrey Dahmer. He used to, when he was a kid, he was a loner. And he'd pick up animals that were run over by a Mack truck. That was exciting to him. You know, there's some kids around 13 that know nothing about sex, and the building catches fire. It's so exciting they have an orgasm. And so they create fire to have an orgasm. And some men are brought up, like I said, in the South Pacific Islands, everybody walked around nude. That's 65 years ago when I was there. I don't know what it's like today. Too emotive. And I never saw a native stare at a female's body that was brought up where everybody walked around nude. They swam nude when they were little kids. So looking at a female body had no meaning at all. They look at the girl's eyes when they talk to them. In this country, or any civilized world, so they're always looking at the tits, the butt, the belly, the legs, because the camera in Hollywood moves in on the cleavage line, you know. Then it moves on a girl walking. And when you say, well, you know how men are, that isn't how they are. That's how they're made by this culture. So when guys say, hey, get a load of that chick, they're talking about their culture. If you're brought up in the South Pacific Islands, nobody ever said, hey, get a load of that. Because they've seen nude women just every day. So it meant nothing. And you should try to sell them a picture, a book with pictures of nude women, you say, well, what do I wrong with that? Do you understand that? So all of your attitudes are shaped by culture. And don't look at men as bad or good. That's the way they're brought up. Okay? Now, there are some men that become excited if women are wearing underthings before they have sex. I want you to wear lacy stuff. Where the hell do they get that from? Some movie or book or magazine. That's where they get it. So in the South Sea Islands, the natives made love on the beach sometimes. They didn't have to do it privately. And they stroked the whole person. That was 2 hands on the girl and stroked the whole person. They had no fetishes. There were no tit men, no leg men, no ass men. They stroked the whole female. Just as you stroke a dog. When you stroke a dog, you stroke the whole dog. You don't stop at the balls. You stroke the whole dog. You know what I mean? When you deal with abnormal behavior, normal to what? Who sets up what normal is, or what right is, or wrong? In the Arab world, the guy may have 15 wives, and they all get along with each other. Here in this country, we have 1 wife. We don't get along. So they think their system is good. You can't say you should only have 1 wife. If 9 wives want to live with you, if you don't force it, or 9 men want to live, and you like that, that's fine, so long as you don't force anybody else into your value system. But there's no right, no wrong, no good, no bad. People are shaped by culture. If you learn that, in the future, when you hold a book and you can't see the lettering, it'll become darker. And you put it closer, the lettering will get larger. You understand? The books will be smart. So when you have medical books in the future, they'll be updated by laser beam. So instead of you getting a new magazine every month as to what's new, there'll be a section in your medical book that tells you what's new, unless you press hold if you don't want to change. When you walk out of your room in the future, the lights go out automatically. You don't need to turn them out. All the air conditioning goes off. The electric companies won't like that at all. You understand? There's not a single thing you can do that somebody won't hate you for it. A lot of people will hate me, not for the Venus Project, but what they think the Venus Project is about. They think it's about a lot of scientists in gray. You will work in Area D. You, Area K. That's what they picture. That's not the Venus Project at all. That's their own projections. If you want to know about the Venus Project, ask me about it. But there's no authority in it. And the doctors are responsible for the health of everybody. And if the health drops below a certain standard, they go back to school. They're not punished. Yes.
We have a question here.
Thank you. I have a question about the things you say about the future. For example, if a scientist has one theory that will solve some sort of problem, and another scientist has another theory for the same problem, wouldn't that create conflict between the scientists? For example, Einstein has continuously had to defend his theories.
Okay. All scientific theories are put to test, and they stop speculating about the Big Bang. That's how it all started. Some scientists believe that. But what was there the day before the Big Bang? And they say light is the only thing that has a constant speed. But they say light is attracted to the black hole, so it couldn't have a constant speed. It's attracted into the black hole. They say all matter is attracted to the black hole. So you see, scientists have theories. So you have in the book, it says, this is one theory, this is another theory, this is another theory, whichever you accept. Or you say, I'm going to hold it in advance. I think it's too early to accept any of those points of view. We don't know enough about it. When people say, where did life come from? Because I guess somebody made two people. Some guy sitting on the throne made a man and a woman. Then he figured he needed some excitement, so he made a snake. In the early days, snakes walked upright. Did you know that? They didn't crawl on their belly. And the snake said, eat of the fruit of knowledge. And they ate of that fruit. And they changed. And he kicked them out of the lovely garden. But what did he expect them to do? So if you have children, you try to make them smarter than you. Why didn't God do that? He made so many dummies. He must have been one of the lesser gods. So you see, everything that you've learned, better yourself, make a lot of money, have a nice house. But they never teach you in school how to relate, how to communicate with others, how to share values with others. They teach you how to make a living. You become an optometrist, he becomes a physicist, you become a structural engineer, he's an architect. But in the future, none of that. Everybody is trained to be a generalist, so they understand different cultures, different values, how we get to be the way we are, so no one can ever use you for war or killing anybody or hurting anybody. Prisons will not exist in the future. We now know enough about human behavior to engineer an environment. Don't let that word scare you. In other words, instead of people moving into new cities in the future, if normal people moved into new cities, they'd louse up the cities. So before they move in, you go to an orientation center. Don't let that scare you. Here's what it means. Before you fly an airplane, anybody that flies here, they put you in a dummy plane first to see if you understand how the controls work. Then they bring you over to a real airplane and they show you how to check the tire pressure, how to make sure there's no water in your fuel tank. And after they do that, then they put you in a real plane and show you how the controls work. You have to be put in an aeronautical environment. If you want to be a doctor, you're put in a medical environment. Think about that. And if you want to be an architect, you're put in an architectural environment, university. So in the future, you don't just move into the new cities. You're oriented first to how those cities work, how you get your resources, what you do when you don't like something. So you have to do that, otherwise you're going to have the same trouble. If you put normal people in the UN, you're going to have all the problems the UN has. The UN cannot attain dynamic equilibrium because their language is too old. They can't communicate with each other. The Democrats can't communicate with Republicans. Husbands and wives have difficulty communicating. Children and parents have difficulty communicating because our language is old and it's not and is subject to interpretation. So if you're worried about these things, they're very easy to correct. It's very easy to provide an abundance for all people without working, without servitude. We're going to phase out all jobs where you don't use your head. And that's most jobs.
The last time when somebody did something that radical was when the Khmer Rouge emptied Phnom Penh and made everybody leave the city to become peasants, to re-educate them.
Well, what we do instead, we encourage what you call individuality. We bring up people. I better tell you what I did with my own kid, okay? When my kid was 4 years old, he said, "Daddy, the wheel came off my toy car." And I said, "So it did." And I threw it in the garbage, and I picked up my book, and I was reading it. And I was watching my corner line. That lower lip goes way out. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, "You throw it away." I said, "I'll get you baby toys where the wheels don't come off." He said, "Well, maybe I can fix it." And I reached for it and gave it to him. And he's trying to get that wheel on. Once he gets it on, then I pick him and say, "That's wonderful. How did you do that?" He said, "Not that little. You see the hole in the wheel? Yes. You see the piece of iron sticking up? Yes. I turned it until it went on." Oh, don't always say, "Let Daddy fix it for you. Let Daddy do this. Let Daddy decide what you take at college." No, give the kid problems, let him solve them. My little girl walked into my lab when she was 3 years old. I put a wrench on the nut the wrong way, intentionally, and it keeps slipping on. So I put it on the wrong way again. She sat with her hands on it. "Daddy, that's no way to do it." So I put it on another way, and that didn't work. So she said, "I'll have to show you how." And she put the wrench on the right way. It was obvious, but I didn't want her to look up to Daddy and think he knows everything. I wanted to scan the environment and think for herself. I said, "Now what do you want, a doll?" "No, I want electric trains. They're more animate." See, you give a girl a doll, a little washing machine, you're programming her. So we don't believe in trying to get anybody to do anything that I want them to do. You do what you're interested in doing. You can take courses in any subject free of charge. You can walk out of school anytime, walk into any other classroom, sit down. If you don't like it, you walk out. And you learn where you want to learn in your own terms. Yes.
We have a question here.
Yeah, thank you. I'm not sure if I understand you right, but it seems to me that in this vision that you're describing, there is a little bit of the Enlightenment ideals, that whole vision that through the application of logic and empiricism and reason that we can reach.
It's not logic that we use. I'm going to give you an example. In Germany and America and France, they have all these children standing up and doing exercise together. Okay? They're ordered to appear, to do that, to limber up. In the army too. What we do is we build a lake in all the cities. There are lakes with an island in the middle, with a craft shop on top, where you can make anything you want to make. In order to get there, you've got to row a boat. And you've got to climb the hill. So we don't order anybody to do exercise. We build it into the environment. Do you understand? The books are placed at a level where you'll be reaching. So you'll be moving in all directions instead of running like this all day with all the other kids. That's trying to dictate behavior to generate healthier bodies. Yes.
I think we have time for one more question.
Thank you. As a member of the psychic movement, we often get questions regarding decision making and so on. Yeah, sorry.
Speak loud.
Yeah, regarding decision making by computer and so on. Not as a question, but more as I'd ask you to elaborate on the kinds of technological decision making that we're already doing in our culture.
Yeah.
As for now.
I can give you an idea if you don't understand that subject too well. In the early days, people used to launch model airplanes. Today, they're radio controlled. The guy moves the controls, and the model can do a loop or a barrel roll or anything. And it looks like the plane is doing it itself, but the guy is working the controls. Today, you can put a chip in a model airplane. It'll take off, do a loop, a barrel roll, and land. But if the runway is cracked, it'll tumble over. That's because you left out a sensor. If you put a sensor in front of that model that scans the runway, And if there's a crack, it moves around and doesn't land there. Lands in another place. It depends on the kind of sensors you put on your machines. They're as dumb as the designer. Yes.
Mr. Frisco, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Pleasure.